Are you tired of your tiny dill seedlings popping up, full of promise, only to wither and die a few days later? It's a frustrating cycle that makes many gardeners give up on this amazing herb. What if I told you there's a simple sowing technique that not only guarantees their survival, but also promises a dill harvest so massive you won't know what to do with it all? In this video, we're uncovering the professional secrets to cultivating lush, healthy dill from seed. And trust me, the single most crucial step is something most home gardeners get completely wrong. Stay tuned, because you are about to become a dill growing expert, and your garden will thank you for it with an endless supply of this fragrant herb. Before we grab our seed packets, let's quickly understand our star player, garden dill, or as botanists call it, Anethum graveolens. This herb has a bit of a dramatic personality. It has earned a reputation for being finicky, especially in its delicate early days as a seedling. The main reason for this is its long, sensitive taproot. This single, deep-growing root is the plant's lifeline, and it absolutely despises being disturbed. This is why dill almost always fails when you try to start it indoors and transplant it. It's also incredibly sensitive to its initial growing conditions, from soil compaction to moisture levels. Understanding this personality is the first real step to mastering its cultivation. We're not just planting a seed in the dirt, we're creating the perfect, undisturbed 5-star resort for a plant that knows exactly what it wants and will not settle for less. Grasp this concept, and you're already halfway to a successful harvest. First, let's bust a major myth right out of the gate. Many people believe there is a tiny, perfect 2-week window in spring to sow dill, and if you miss it, you're out of luck for the year. This could not be further from the truth. While a spring sowing is fantastic for a great early summer harvest, the real secret to having fresh dill all season long is a technique called succession planting. Dill is a relatively fast-growing annual, meaning it completes its entire life cycle, from seed to flower to seed again, in just one season. This speed is your greatest advantage. Instead of planting a huge patch all at once, which will mature and go to seed all at the same time, you should plant a small amount every 2 to 3 weeks. Start as soon as the danger of hard frost has passed in the spring, and continue sowing new little patches well into the late summer. This strategy ensures that as one patch is reaching its peak for harvesting, a new, younger patch is just beginning to produce tender leaves. This gives you a continuous, uninterrupted supply for pickles, salads, and fish dishes from June all the way until the first hard frost of autumn. This is the difference between having dill for a month and having dill for half a year. Now let's talk about choosing your champion. Walking into a garden center or browsing online seed catalogs can be overwhelming because, believe it or not all dill is created equal. The variety you choose has a significant impact on your plant's growth habit, its flavor, and when you can harvest it. The most common variety is bouquet, which is an excellent all-purpose choice. It grows to about 3 feet tall, produces abundant foliage for fresh use, and then develops large flower heads, or umbels, that are absolutely perfect for pickling. If you want dill primarily for its leafy greens, or fronds, and you want to delay the plant from flowering, look for a fern leaf or ducat variety. These are often dwarf varieties that are more compact and bushier, making them ideal for container gardening. They are bred to be slow to bolt, meaning they focus their energy on producing leaves for a longer period. On the other end of the spectrum is Mammoth Long Island dill. As the name suggests, this variety is a giant, capable of reaching 5 feet or more in height. It's an older, heirloom variety grown less for its leaves and more for its massive seed heads and thick, flavorful stems. So before you buy, ask yourself, do I want leaves, seeds for pickling, or both? Your answer will guide you to the perfect dill variety for your garden's needs. Here is a truth that can save you weeks of disappointment. The freshness of your dill seeds is absolutely critical. This is one of the most overlooked factors in germination failure. Dill seeds, unfortunately, have a relatively short shelf life compared to other garden vegetables like tomatoes or beans. Their viability, which is their ability to sprout and grow, drops off significantly after just 2 to 3 years. If you're using a packet of seeds you found in the back of your garden shed from 4 years ago, your chances of success are drastically reduced, even if you do everything else perfectly. You might get a few weak seedlings, or you might get nothing at all. To avoid this frustration, always try to buy your seeds from a reputable supplier that indicates the packing year on the packet. Look for seeds packed for the current growing season. If you are unsure about an old packet of seeds, you can perform a simple viability test. Place 10 seeds on a damp paper towel, fold it over, put it in a sealed plastic bag, and leave it in a warm place. After a week to 10 days, check how many have sprouted. If fewer than 5 or 6 have germinated, it's time to toss that packet and invest in a fresh one. Starting with fresh, vigorous seeds is like giving your plants a massive head start in the race for survival. When it comes to finding the perfect home for your dill, there is one non-negotiable rule: sun, sun, and more sun. Dill is a sun-worshipping plant, originating from the sunny climates of the Mediterranean and southern Russia. It requires what gardeners call full sun to truly thrive, which means it needs to receive at least 6 to 8 hours of direct, unfiltered sunlight every single day. If you plant dill in a shady or partially shaded spot, it will let you know it's unhappy. The plants will become leggy, which means they will grow tall, thin, and spindly as they stretch desperately towards the nearest light source. Their stems will be weak and floppy, unable to support themselves, and the production of those fragrant, flavorful leaves will be severely diminished. You'll get a pale, sad-looking plant instead of a robust, bushy one. Before you even think about preparing the soil, spend a day observing your garden. Take note of which areas get hit by the sun first thing in the morning and stay sunny all day. These prime locations are your ideal spots for a dill patch. Don't try to cheat the system. Providing adequate sunlight is the most fundamental step to growing strong, healthy, and productive dill plants. It fuels all the growth and oil production that gives dill its characteristic taste and aroma. Once you've chosen a sunny spot, it's time to think about what's underfoot. Dill can be quite particular about its soil. Just throwing seeds on hard, compacted clay or overly sandy soil is a recipe for failure. The ideal soil for dill mimics the loose, fertile ground of its native habitat. First and foremost, the soil must be well-draining. Remember that long taproot we talked about? It needs to travel deep into the earth without hitting a wall of compacted soil or sitting in a puddle of water. If the soil is waterlogged, that root will rot, and the plant will die quickly. On the other hand, soil that is too sandy will let water drain away too fast, leaving the plant thirsty. The perfect texture is a loose, crumbly loam. Dill also prefers soil that is rich in organic matter. This provides a slow, steady supply of nutrients. Finally, dill performs best in a soil with a slightly acidic to neutral pH, somewhere between 5.8 and 7.0. You can get an inexpensive soil test kit from any garden center to check your pH. Understanding these preferences allows you to amend your existing soil to create the perfect 5-star resort your dill is looking for, rather than just hoping for the best in whatever dirt you happen to have. Let's get our hands dirty with the first and arguably most physically demanding step of soil preparation: the deep dig. This is not just about turning over the first few inches of topsoil. This is about fundamentally changing the structure of the ground to accommodate that all-important taproot. Dill's taproot wants to grow straight down, sometimes as deep as a foot or more, in search of moisture and stability. If it encounters hard, compacted earth just a few inches below the surface, its growth will be stunted. This leads to a weak, underdeveloped plant that is more susceptible to drought, wind, and disease. Your goal is to loosen the soil to a depth of at least 10 to 12 inches. The best tool for this is a garden fork, also known as a spading fork. Push the tines of the fork all the way into the ground, then rock it back and forth to break up the compacted layers. Work your way across the entire planting area, systematically loosening everything. You don't necessarily need to turn the soil completely over, which can disrupt the delicate soil ecosystem. The main objective is to eliminate compaction and create clear, easy pathways for those roots to explore. This single act of deep loosening is a game changer and ensures the foundational support your dill plants need to grow tall and strong. After you've done the hard work of loosening the soil, it's time for the second phase of preparation. Amending for success. This is where we add the good stuff that will feed our dill and perfect the soil's texture. The single best amendment for almost any garden soil is well-rotted compost. Compost is a miracle worker. It improves the structure of both clay and sandy soils, helps retain moisture, and, most importantly, provides a wide range of essential nutrients in a slow-release form that won't overwhelm the plants. Spread a generous 2 to 3 inch layer of compost over your loosened soil and gently work it into the top 6 to 8 inches with your garden fork or a rake. Another excellent option is well-aged manure, but be sure it is fully decomposed, as fresh manure can burn the delicate roots of seedlings. Now, here is a crucial point. Avoid using high nitrogen chemical fertilizers. While nitrogen promotes leafy green growth, an excess of it will cause your dill to grow very quickly, but it will be weak, sappy, and more attractive to pests like aphids. It can also dilute the concentration of the essential oils, resulting in less flavorful dill. Stick to natural, balanced amendments like compost to build a healthy, living soil that will nourish your plants throughout their entire life cycle. We've prepared the perfect bed, and now it's time for the main event, sowing the seeds. There are generally two schools of thought on this, planting in neat, tidy rows, or broadcasting the seeds for a more natural-looking patch. While rows can make weeding a little easier, I've found that a modified broadcast method often yields the best results for a dense, lush patch of dill. Planting in rows can sometimes lead to individual plants getting too much sun exposure on their stems or being too exposed to wind. A denser patch allows the plants to support each other, creating a microclimate that helps retain humidity and shades the soil, which keeps the roots cool. So, how do you do it? Take a pinch of seeds between your thumb and forefinger. Then, standing over your prepared bed, gently scatter the seeds by rubbing your fingers together, as if you were sprinkling salt on a meal. Try to distribute them as evenly as possible over the entire area. Don't worry about perfect spacing at this stage. We'll address that later. The goal is to get a light, even covering of seeds across the soil surface. This mimics how dill would naturally reseed itself in the wild and encourages the growth of a strong, self-supporting community of plants. We have now arrived at the single most common and most fatal mistake that gardeners make when planting dill, sowing the seeds too deep. This one error is responsible for more failed dill patches than almost any other factor. You must understand that dill seeds are small and they do not contain a large energy reserve to power their journey to the surface. If you bury them an inch deep, as you might with a bean or a pea, the tiny seedling will exhaust all of its stored energy, trying to push its way through the heavy soil, and will die before it ever sees the sunlight. Furthermore, dill seeds actually require some exposure to light to trigger germination. This is a biological mechanism that tells the seed it is at the surface and it's safe to sprout. Therefore, the absolute golden rule for sowing dill is to barely cover the seeds at all. After you have scattered your seeds over the prepared soil, the best way to cover them is to take a handful of fine soil, compost or vermiculite, and gently sift it over the area through your fingers. You want to apply the thinnest possible dusting, just enough to hide most of the seeds from view and ensure they have good contact with the soil. you should still be able to see a few seeds here and there. That's how you know you've done it right. This shallow planting is non-negotiable for high germination rates. You've just broadcast your seeds, aiming for an even scatter, but what about spacing? Overcrowding is the next great enemy of a healthy dill patch. If too many seedlings sprout in the same tiny area, they will be forced to compete with each other for sunlight, water, and nutrients. This intense competition results in a patch full of weak, spindly, and stunted plants that are much more likely to succumb to disease or pests. None of them will reach their full potential. While it seems counterintuitive, giving each plant adequate space is the secret to a larger overall harvest. So how do we manage spacing when we've broadcast the seeds? First, don't overdo the initial sowing. A light sprinkle is better than a dense carpet. Second, and this is the important part, we will thin the seedlings after they sprout. We are intentionally overseeding with the plan to remove the weaker ones later. This allows us to select the strongest, most vigorous seedlings to grow to maturity. Think of it as creating a controlled version of survival of the fittest in your garden bed. Aim for an eventual final spacing of about 4 to 6 inches between plants. This might seem like a lot of space when they are tiny, but trust me, a healthy dill plant will quickly fill it in, growing into a bushy, productive specimen. The seeds are in the ground, barely covered, and now they need water to wake up and start the germination process. However, how you apply that water is incredibly important. If you take a garden hose with a harsh jet spray, you will commit 2 terrible crimes at once. First, you will blast the tiny, lightweight dill seeds and the fine soil covering them completely out of position, washing them into clumps or even right out of the bed. Second, you will compact the surface of that beautiful, fluffy soil you just worked so hard to prepare. The correct method is all about being gentle. The ideal tool is a watering can with a rose attachment, which creates a soft, rain-like shower. If you don't have one, a spray bottle set to a fine mist or a hose nozzle with a gentle shower setting will also work. Lightly and evenly moisten the entire surface of the soil. Your goal is to make the soil damp, like a well-wrung-out sponge, but not waterlogged or swimming in puddles. For the next week or two, until the seedlings emerge, you must not let the soil's surface dry out completely. A dry spell at this critical stage can kill the germinating seeds. Check it daily and give it another gentle shower whenever the top layer starts to look dry. After about 7 to 14 days of patient watering and waiting, you'll start to see the first magical signs of life. The first things to emerge from the soil are the cotyledons, which are the seed leaves. In dill, these look like 2 tiny, very thin grass-like blades. It's very easy to mistake them for grass or a weed at first glance, so be careful. A few days after the cotyledons appear, you'll see the first true leaves begin to form between them. These will have the classic feathery, fern-like appearance that is unmistakably dill. This is the moment to celebrate your success in achieving germination. A healthy patch will show a relatively even sprinkle of these tiny green shoots across the entire bed. If you see them coming up in dense, tight clumps, it means your initial broadcast was a bit heavy in those spots. If you see large, bare patches, it could be that the seeds were washed away or that section of soil dried out. Observing the pattern of germination gives you valuable feedback on your sowing and watering technique. Pay close attention during this phase, as it's the first visual confirmation that your careful preparation is paying off and your dill journey has officially begun. Congratulations, your dill has sprouted! But don't relax just yet. The first 2 weeks after germination are the most perilous time in a dill seedling's life. This is when they are most vulnerable, and when most gardeners experience the frustrating phenomenon of their seedlings suddenly dying. The primary culprit is often a fungal disease known as damping off, which thrives in cool, overly wet conditions and causes the tiny stems to rot right at the soil line. To prevent this, your watering strategy must adapt. Instead of keeping the surface constantly moist as you did for germination, you now want to allow the very top layer of soil to dry out slightly between waterings. This creates an environment that is less hospitable to fungus. Water the seedlings in the morning so the foliage has time to dry before evening. Also, ensure good air circulation around the plants. The second major threat is pests. Slugs and snails find tender young seedlings to be an irresistible snack and can wipe out an entire patch overnight. Go on patrol in the evening with a flashlight or set up beer traps or other organic slug deterrents. Protecting your seedlings during this critical 2-week window is the bridge between successful germination and establishing a truly thriving dill patch. Now that your seedlings are an inch or two tall and have their first set of true leaves, it's time to address the great dill debate: to thin or not to thin. Many new gardeners feel a pang of guilt at the thought of pulling out perfectly good seedlings that they worked so hard to grow. It feels wasteful. However, I am here to tell you that thinning is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of kindness to the plants you leave behind. As we discussed, overcrowding leads to a desperate struggle for resources. By selectively removing some seedlings, you are eliminating that competition. This allows the remaining plants to access all the sunlight, water, and nutrients they need to grow into large, robust, and highly productive plants. A thinned patch will ultimately yield a far greater total harvest of dill than a crowded one. The proper technique is crucial. Don't just yank the seedlings out, as this can disturb the delicate roots of their neighbors. The best method is to take a small pair of scissors and simply snip the unwanted seedlings off at the soil line. Choose the smallest and weakest-looking ones to remove, and leave the strongest, healthiest ones. Your final goal should be to have one strong plant every 4 to 6 inches in all directions. Here's a simple step that many gardeners skip, but one that can make a huge difference in the health and productivity of your dill patch: mulching. Mulch is simply a layer of organic material that you spread over the surface of the soil around your plants. For dill, a light, airy mulch is best. Think of materials like clean straw, shredded leaves, or grass clippings that have been allowed to dry for a day or two. After your dill seedlings have been thinned and are a few inches tall, carefully apply a 1 to 2 inch layer of mulch over the entire bed, being careful not to bury the plants themselves. This layer of mulch is a true unsung hero in the garden. First, it acts like a blanket, dramatically slowing down the evaporation of water from the soil. This means you'll have to water less often, and your plants will have a more consistent supply of moisture. Second, it suppresses weeds by blocking the sunlight they need to germinate, saving you hours of tedious work. Third, as the organic mulch slowly breaks down, it enriches the soil and feeds the beneficial microorganisms that live within it. It's a simple, low-effort step that pays massive dividends in water conservation, weed control, and soil health. When it comes to feeding your dill, the most important principle to remember is that less is more. Our modern gardening culture often pushes the idea that we need to constantly feed our plants with powerful fertilizers, but for an herb like dill, this is a huge mistake. As we touched on earlier, dill that is fed with too much nitrogen-rich fertilizer will grow very fast and produce a lot of lush green foliage. This might look impressive at first, but it's a deceptive kind of growth. The plant's cell walls will be weak and watery, making it much more susceptible to being damaged by wind or rain. It also becomes a magnet for sap-sucking insects like aphids, who love this soft, sappy growth. Worst of all, this rapid, forced growth dilutes the concentration of the essential oils in the leaves, resulting in dill that has a bland, disappointing flavor. If you prepared your soil properly with a generous amount of compost, your dill likely won't need any additional fertilizer at all. If you have particularly poor soil, or notice the leaves looking pale and yellow, a single, light feeding with a diluted organic liquid fertilizer like compost tea or fish emulsion midway through its growth is more than enough. Remember, you are growing for flavor, not for size. Did you know that the neighbors you choose for your dill can have a big impact on its health? This is the principle of companion planting, which is the practice of growing certain plants together for their mutual benefit. Dill is a fantastic companion for many vegetables in the brassica family, which includes cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, and kale. The strong aromatic scent of dill can help to confuse and repel common pests that plague these plants, such as the cabbage moth and cabbage worms. In return, the large leaves of the brassica plants can provide some gentle afternoon shade for the base of the dill plants in the peak of summer, helping to keep their roots cool and prevent the soil from drying out too quickly. Dill is also thought to improve the overall health and vigor of these plants. However, there are also some bad neighbors you need to avoid. Dill should never be planted near carrots or parsnips. They are in the same botanical family and can attract the same pests, like the carrot rust fly. Most importantly, keep your dill far away from its close cousin, fennel. They can cross-pollinate, which will result in seeds and plants that have a strange, muddled flavor that is neither dill nor fennel. Good placement can lead to a healthier, more balanced garden ecosystem. We introduced this concept at the very beginning, but it is so important that it deserves its own detailed focus. The strategy of succession sowing is what separates the casual dill grower from the true dill master. Let's break down the logistics. Your first sowing should happen in the spring as soon as the soil can be worked. Then mark your calendar. Every 2 to 3 weeks, you are going to prepare a new, small area and sow another batch of dill seeds. This doesn't have to be a large space. Even a 1 by 1 foot square is enough to provide a family with fresh dill for a couple of weeks. As your first patch grows and you begin harvesting from it, it will eventually start to bolt or send up its flower stalk. This is a natural part of its life cycle. At this point, the leaf production slows down and the flavor can change. But because you have been succession sowing, you will have another, younger patch of dill just entering its prime leafy stage, ready for you to start harvesting. You can continue this cycle all the way through the summer and into the early fall. This simple, repetitive process transforms dill from a fleeting spring treat into a consistent, reliable staple in your garden and your kitchen for months on end. It's the ultimate secret to a never-ending harvest. One of the most common complaints about dill is that it bolts too quickly. Bolting is the term for when a plant prematurely switches from producing leaves to producing flowers and seeds, especially in response to stress. For dill, the primary trigger for bolting is heat. As the long, hot days of midsummer arrive, the dill plant's internal clock tells it that its time is running out and it needs to reproduce before the season ends. While you can't stop this process entirely, you can certainly delay it to get a much longer leafy harvest. The first key is consistent moisture. A plant that is allowed to dry out will become stressed and bolt much faster. A good layer of mulch will help immensely with this. The second key is to provide some relief from the most intense afternoon sun, if possible. Planting dill where it might get some dappled shade from a taller plant during the hottest part of the day can help. Third, and most importantly, is the harvesting technique. Regularly harvesting the outer, older leaves sends a signal to the plant to keep producing more foliage. If you let the plant grow untouched, it will mature and bolt much more quickly. By managing stress and harvesting smartly, you can trick your dill into staying in its leafy, productive stage for as long as possible. Finally, let's talk about how to harvest your dill to get the most out of each plant. The way you snip can either encourage more growth or signal the end of the line for that plant. You can begin harvesting as soon as the plant is about 6 to 8 inches tall and has several feathery fronds. The wrong way to harvest is to chop the entire top off the plant. While this gives you a big bunch of dill at once, it can severely stunt the plant's ability to regrow. The correct method is to harvest from the outside in and the top down. Look for the oldest, largest fronds, which are typically found around the outer edges of the plant. Using a pair of scissors or your fingers, snip these fronds off at the point where they meet the main stem. You can also snip off the topmost, newest bits of growth. This type of harvesting, known as cut and come again, encourages the plant to branch out from the base and become bushier and more productive. It sends a signal to the plant that it needs to keep producing new leaves to survive. Always leave at least 1/3 of the plant's foliage intact, so it has enough energy to continue photosynthesizing and growing. This smart, continuous harvesting is a key part of the succession planting strategy, ensuring each plant gives you the maximum possible yield. So there you have it. The path from a frustrating patch of dying seedlings to an abundant, season-long dill harvest isn't paved with complex fertilizers or secret potions. It's built on a foundation of simple but crucial principles. The biggest secrets are all about respecting the plant's nature. Understand and protect its sensitive taproot by never transplanting it and by loosening the soil deeply. Master the art of shallow sowing, remembering that the seeds need light to germinate and should only be dusted with soil. Provide the gentle, consistent moisture that coaxes seedlings to life without drowning them. And finally, embrace the brilliant strategy of succession planting, sowing a little bit every few weeks to ensure you are never without this incredible herb. You now have the complete blueprint to go from frustrating failure to a dill harvest that will amaze your friends and family. Thank you so much for watching. If you found these tips helpful, please do me a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dive gardening guides. And now I have a question for you. What's your #1 biggest struggle when it comes to growing herbs in your garden? Let me know in the comments below, and let's all learn from each other.